I'm here at the International Conference on Men's Issues 2019 with Paul Elam, the creator of A Voice for Men. So, Paul, how's it going?
It's going great. It's a great
Yes.
conference. Everybody's having a lot of fun. I know I am, and only wish more people could make it, but
Yeah, yeah.
they grow every year.
Nice, nice. And you did a panel discussion earlier as well, wasn't it?
Right? We did a panel discussion on psychology's war on men,
Yeah.
talking about the new APA guidelines on toxic masculinity, that sort of thing.
Right, okay. And so you'd say within the field of psychology that there's a bit of a bleak outlook towards men.
Terrible, not just bleak. It's getting worse. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
this is really, it is a hateful trend endorsed by our mental health community.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, you think about the implications of that. I mean, you have to go back to 1936 Berlin to come up with, a mental health apparatus that is actually preaching class hatred toward an entire group of people, in this case, a gender.
Yeah, it's pretty terrible. I think yeah, because I was or used to be a mental health nurse in the UK, and I'd say the whole field is falling apart somewhat at the moment, and this is just one element of that. It seems it's hatred towards men, and yeah, just the whole the kind of writing off of male suicide, for instance, saying they just need to talk about their problems and be
Like
more like
women
women, and
do.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
of course. If they were more like women, they wouldn't kill themselves. And again, that's how the hatred has infected the establishment. It is just amazing that we're not even, mental health professionals are charged with understanding human beings. That's the only reason that they exist,
hmm,
is to understand human beings and all their nuance and all their subtleties. And they've done a relatively fairly good job of that with women, uh, because women's healing does a lot of it, for the most part, center around articulating feelings and catharsis in that way. For men, it's a very different scenario, and
hmm,
there's absolutely no understanding of that. So what they do, instead of understanding where men are at and how men process emotions, they say, well, we just need to make men process emotions the same way women do. And
hmm.
that's, another word for that is abuse.
Yeah, I think that's what one of the problems that I saw with the mental health field, and I think there was just the the general issue I got with it was just that there was this sort of complete lack of any kind of promotion of self-reliance, and also with I guess with a lot of the women who went through, there was a kind of endlessly victimizing them, and it didn't seem as though that was helping them at all. And
No, it
yeah, yeah,
doesn't. Matter of fact, it has just the opposite effect.
mm-hmm.
It makes victims out of people who can be helped with autonomy and self-responsibility and being proactive, and it makes them stagnant, and
Mm-hmm.
and feeling victimized and just looking for some, who do they point the finger at.
Yeah, yeah.
That's not mental health treatment.
Did you? I'm not sure if it's similar situation in because it's probably been a little while since you worked in that field, isn't it? But I'm not sure if you also saw this trend. But it was with a lot of women who were, given the personality disorder diagnosis, sometimes informally. And what I saw was that for these women, that um, they were kind of treated in too nice a fashion, and
They weren't held
it
to
was like
account.
yeah, if they went and said they were going to commit suicide, they would then be brought in and given treatment and help, and then they become more and more destructive while they're in the services, and every step of the way it's like we're caring and loving towards them, and it's I always got the impression that that was the exact wrong way of working with
Sure it
these
is.
types of clients. Yeah.
What happens in a lot of those cases is that the personality disordered female will come in the treatment setting and actually enlist the help of mental health professionals to attack and destroy other people in their lives who they're
Hmm.
trying to harm.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and you have, this is where we came up with concepts like radical acceptance, where mental health professionals are actually telling families and extended family members of very abusive, destructive people how they need to tolerate the abuse
Mm-hmm.
and offer love in response to being damaged.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, think about that. Think about the lack of sound thinking that went
Uh-huh.
into that.
It's sort of saying that, yeah, basically your constitution as a person isn't important, and you just need to let this other person walk all over you. Yeah.
Absolutely. And steal from you and lie
Mm.
about you and falsely accuse you and terrorize your family and cause destruction and mayhem. And if you draw limits with that and won't take it, then you're the abuser. That's language coming from mental health professionals, not just from the sick, affected women,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
from the mental health professionals who are advocating that we tolerate abuse from them. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. One of the other client groups that I worked with a little bit, and I saw, again, I'd say it was a maladaptive approach from mental health services, was it was a lot of women who had like anorexia, and it seemed the approach that was used with them was to, so the entire staff team would kind of walk on eggshells and would watch everything they said, and if they, if, for instance, if the staff member said a comment like "You're looking well today," they would consider that that was triggering, and they would then say, "Oh yeah, you're not meant to say anything like that." I guess even though it's just a simple compliment, apparently it could trigger the patient, and then they would
Yes.
engage in some act of self-harm or
And
something
then rather than
afterwards.
help the patient understand that this is the way the world interacts, that
Mm-hmm.
people say you're looking good today or, good morning or something like
Yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah.
that is, if they're reacting to that in a negative way, it is on them to make the change, not the world around them. And again, when you see mental health professionals creating an environment that is so artificial where people can't say you're looking good this morning,
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
it,
Mm-hmm.
it's a sad state of affairs.
One of the things I noticed with it was certainly, I'd say, with the subject of psychology. I think in the UK it's 70% of graduates now within that subject are female, and certainly within mental health nursing as well, it's more like 80%. So I think there's been a complete feminization of the industry, and I mean, I'd say my experience was that a lot of the work that was being done as a result of that feminization was actually promoting negative female characteristics. I'm not sure if your opinion was, or your experience was similar to
It's
that.
very similar. What I've seen for the most part is the the institutions that educate these people are adopting one masculine characteristics that they deem as negative. They're bullies. You see this academically within the establishment, and you see students towing the line because the academicians will bully them, will fail them
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
if they don't take on these characteristics. And at the same time, when they're describing the unhealthy aspects of men and masculinity, they're doing the very things they're describing
Sure,
as
sure.
unhealthy in men, and they're finding it a source of pride in that. And it's become part of the institutional bias, just like everything else we've discussed.
Yeah, yeah. I certainly did find with the when I was doing my training as well that there was very much you kind of had to, you were rewarded basically for being obedient in when you were writing essays, for stating the opinions they wanted you to state, and for kind of just going along with all of the so-called wisdom, and it was just a lot of progressive wisdom, and yeah.
Absolutely, and that's what they want to hear. And they will drum people out. And I don't know what's going on in the UK with this or in other countries, but in this country, they will actually drum people out of their education if they don't comply. I get requests from students frequently saying, "What do I do?" I mean, they're wanting an essay from me on something, and I know if I don't give them the right opinion, they're going to fail me, but I don't want to lie.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I tell them to lie.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That if they want to complete their education, because these people have no morals whatsoever about forcing them out if they don't hear what they want to hear.
I think the results of all of this within the mental health industry is that it's not actually helping that many people. In
It's
terms
hurting a
of,
lot of people.
I'd say a lot of people who go through it, their mental health becomes worse as a result of their experiences with the system. And I think there's too much medication use as well. And
Oh, sure.
yeah, I just say, I think that would be, the way I see it is it's kind of instead of actually teaching self-reliance, we're instead giving people drugs to numb their minds and then kind of get them out into the community really quickly, and they're then hooked on these harmful psychiatric drugs.
Well, sure, and that makes the pharmaceutical industry very happy. I mean, they're only too happy to do that. But yes, they're handing out antidepressants like candy nowadays, particularly to women. And part of that is because they don't know how to treat depression cognitively. So what's the next best way to make money off of it? You give them a prescription which may make them suicidal, which may have very profound side effects. Some of these are very, very potent psychotropic medications, and they can do great damage to people, but that's the sort of the blanket treatment. You medicate them, and then you come in for what we call a session of wave therapy every month, where the psychiatrist says hi and then writes a note and gives them another month's supply of their antidepressants. And that's the mental health system that we have.
Yeah, it does. It seems to me that there is this failure in terms of masculinity. I'd say, in that I just think the industry needs more men, and that if there were more men there would be more of a promotion of actually telling the service users, the clients, that they, helping them to sort their life out, to make things better, instead of, just giving them loads of drugs and using that as a band-aid for their problems. And then from there, you just help people in the long term.
Masculine values would go a long way. Or what I consider to be masculine values are probably not even really masculine values. Common sense.
Yeah.
Self accountability is a huge thing. One of the biggest parts of mental health treatment is substance abuse treatment. And that model is really good. I mean, people can say whatever they want to about 12-step programs or whatever, but they rely on the idea that the individual is responsible for everything they're doing. That there is no excuse. There's no boogeyman to point to. Say, it is on you whether you drink and drive. Period. It's your decision. So now start living your life understanding that's your responsibility. That kind may feel a little harsh. That kind of treatment may feel a little harsh. But the fact of the matter is, it would do a lot of depressed people good to understand this, that they've got to improve their lives. And often it's by doing things instead of just talking.
And generally, I think there's a massive suicide epidemic, certainly in the UK. I'm not sure what the statistics are for America, but
They're not good.
Right, I mean, in the UK, it's like 13 men kill themselves every day, and they make up 80% of the suicides. And it just seems that there's not this actual care and attention by mental health services. That's if it was there, I think a lot less of these men would be killing themselves.
And you can bet if it was 30 women a day killing themselves, they'd be paying a lot more attention to the problem as a gender issue. But since it's only men, they probably just needed to man up.
I mean, they seem to, the approach they use just seems to be that, we just need to get these men to open up and talk about their problems.
Yes, if they would cry for us
usually,
and make us feel like competent therapists by watching them cry, then they would get better. And of course, for most men, now there are a percentage of men that emotional catharsis in that way is a benefit. I'd say I would estimate maybe 20% of the population of men. But for most men, they heal through action, through doing things, through working together. I mean, you look at what Eric Clapton is a great example. His son was killed tragically. And he went through that grief process, which has to be tremendous, profound grief, with his music. When Michael Jordan lost his father, he put his energy and his grief into sports, and that helps him get through. This is how men handle grief, is they take action, and they don't sit in a circle and talk and weep about their losses. And although we need to allow that they can do that, there's no problem with that. But when you try to force all men into that mold and say the only way that they're going to grieve their losses is to sit and cry for a therapist who can make a note to say that they cried, that's insanity. That's absolute insanity, and it's abusive toward them.
I think so, and I think it's one of the different experiences that men and women have, is that when women open up about their feelings, other people tend to help them, whereas with men, that's not really the case, you know.
It's like, stay away.
Yeah, and it's more they benefit from actually solving their problems because they're regarded as problem solvers. I guess society's problem solvers. So I just generally figure for men that if they're able to solve all of their problems, and then once they've done that, then they can just rest easy for the evening, and that's kind of the state they want to be in, you know?
Yeah, but unfortunately, as my friend Tom Golden says all the time, men's pain is taboo. When we see a woman sitting in a restaurant alone crying, people tend to want to gather around and say, what's wrong? How we can help you. If they see a man sitting alone crying in a restaurant, people move away.
Yeah.
And then we wonder why men suicide.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, no, it's pretty horrific, that situation. There was one other thing I wanted to discuss with you, and I'm not sure if this is as much of a problem in the US as it is in the UK, but we're seeing this within the mental health industry now, and the problem is that a lot of the wards have become feminized, and so it's mainly female staff teams working there. And also the approach we're expected to use is very much a talking to the patient, being nice to them. One of the policies that they're using is called safe wards. And so with that, you're told that you shouldn't say no to the client. Instead, you should smile at them at all times, be positive to them, don't say anything that they could construe in a negative way. And it seems that what's happened is that we're not really being authoritative enough with a lot of, say, fighting age men who are clients who often are quite hostile and so on. And my experience was that a lot of these men were running the wards and not the staff team. And the whole thing was just falling apart into complete chaos.
That kind of approach, that's an enforced hands-off approach, and you're instructing staff members in facilities to not be real, to not be genuine. I mean, anybody that gives this 30 seconds of thought knows it's nonsense, that it's absolute nonsense. Often, what people need is a caring dose of reality. That's what, when we talk about unconditional positive regard in working with people, we're not saying unconditionally nice. We're not saying unconditionally smiles all the time. It's, I regard you positively as a human being. Now here's what we expect.
Right, yeah.
And when you violate those expectations, you're going to hear about it. There's going to be consequences. And it doesn't mean that I don't have regard for you as a human being. As a matter of fact, it's because I have regard for you as a human being that we have these expectations to help you get better. And that is a sensible approach. It does help people. They feel cared about. Just like kids feel cared about when you set limits with them. Because children with no limits don't feel safe.
Yeah, yeah.
And so they start acting out to get parents to erect boundaries for them in their behavior, and that makes them feel secure. Well, adults are no different, particularly those if they have mental health issues.
Yeah, yeah.
They feel scared. They feel scared by their own impulses, their own intentions sometimes, and how they'll act. And when people bring that under control and help them think and look at their own behavior as it's happening, then they have an opportunity to make changes.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
if you can't even tell somebody no,
Yeah, I mean, this is just something I've seen more, I guess, in general feminized society, is that a lack of boundary setting, and I kind of see it in a lot of
this is why
places now.
children need fathers,
Yeah, yeah.
because fathers set limits on behavior better than women do. I know it's sacrilege to say that.
Yeah.
You can't ever say that men do something better than women. But let me tell you, when it comes to providing discipline for children, men do that better than women.
Yeah, and when they're allowed to, and when
they're allowed to.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
I should have qualified that. Yeah, unless the state intervenes to make sure that the children have no limits, so they can grow up and buy guns and shoot people, which is what we're seeing this happen now.
And I think it's that that positive attitude of being a disciplinarian in a positive way. That is it's not really promoted so much nowadays. It's more I guess more of a hippie attitude towards children of letting them do what they want, and because letting them be free.
That have no empathy.
Yeah, yeah.
Is the thing that fathers do is they force the child to see the world through someone else's eyes other than their own. That creates empathy. That creates the capacity for empathy. If you're never telling a child no,
yeah, yeah.
they don't develop empathy. What would be one of the main characteristics we would assume about all mass shooters where it concerns empathy? They have none.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's why almost all of them were raised in fatherless homes.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's also that I'd say more generally what men are doing is that they're teaching, it's mainly the younger boys, but also the younger girls as well, the rules of society, that you act in this way, you do that, and then you do all right if you follow these rules. And generally, if they're being fair about it and the rules are correct, then the child does do well afterwards.
Yes, they do.
And
they do.
but none of that happens if there's no boundary setting and no rules in place.
It is the most inexcusably thoughtless thing in the world to raise a child without hearing the word no. It's abusive toward the children. They grow up expecting the world to give them everything, and then when it doesn't, they're constantly depressed and frustrated, angry at the world. This is what it sets up when you don't teach a child that they have to take a no, and consequently, every once in a while, you should allow a child a no.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And allow them to say no to things within reason. But that kind of thoughtfulness just isn't in our parenting, and it's not in our mental health system either.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, I think that's a good explanation of the failure of the mental health services, I'd say, in both the UK and the USA as well. And
I'm sure we're equally miserable in that respect.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yes, it's a fairly bad situation, and I sort of struggle generally with the industry, and I think a lot of people in the country aren't doing particularly well in terms of their own mental health, and yeah. But it was great talking to you today, and hope you have a good rest of the conference.
Thank you. I enjoyed it myself.